Okay, so this is my assignment on change for my class ELAD 543, and I'm going to interview my coach, my math coach, who's a leader in my school at the elementary level, and I'm going to ask her these different types of questions about change. My first question is, Dr. Roding, when an administrator identifies an area in need of improvement or change, what kind of support system does he or she need in order to address all the levels of growth that need to be addressed? In your opinion, what does an administrator need to do when they identify an area that needs an improvement? What's the kind of support team do they need?
Mm-hmm. So I think they need to reach out to others, like maybe their assistant principals or the sort of administrators or even teacher leaders in the building, and see if other people identify that as a need of change also.
Would you say all coaches as well, different types of coaches?
Coaches, academic interventionists are usually part of that, and just teacher leaders. So like in our district, we have the teachers who go to LIFT. So
Okay.
They would be considered teacher leaders. So those are good people to kind of pull on board and say, is this change, do you think it's really important? Have you noticed anything?
All right, so their input you will want their input as well, just not have the administrator administer the change immediately. Their input would be important.
Right. I think you want to build that sense of trust and that sense of transparency, that it's not just coming from you, that this change has really been thought about.
Okay. My second question is, when implementing change in your building, what type of resistance did you experience from either staff or students or parents? So in your opinion, in your experience with changes that have happened where you've been, what kind of resistance is usually that you see in buildings?
Usually the least resistance I've found is from the students. Students pretty much, at least at the elementary level, they kind of go with the flow. They're comfortable with change. Staff is typically not as understanding, and I think if the administration is more transparent about what's happening and why it's happening, there's less resistance from teachers, but there's always going to be some. And I think parents, the resistance that you see from parents, a lot of it is related to them not understanding the change. So I think that needs to be, the parents need to be brought on board too, especially if it's a big change.
So if it's a big change, do you think before that change is even implemented, like almost like, meeting kind of workshop for parents, explaining to them before you even do it?
Exactly. Kind of like how the Common Core, the math standards rolled in, and there was so much backlash on it because teachers didn't really understand it, and parents understand it less than teachers. So students were fine with it. So it's the same thing. If you could have taught parents and you could have taught teachers it better, then you wouldn't have had so much resistance.
A little follow-up question, but I think you answered. So some reasons you think that people might resist is because they pretty much don't have a clear understanding of the change. They need to have it explained to them from start to finish.
Right. I think lack of understanding is a big reason. I think another reason is fear a lot of times, because they don't understand it and it's something new, and people worry about what's the effect going to be on me. Because basically it always comes down to, how is it going to affect me? So
okay.
You need to, as part of that change, you need to make sure that people understand what is the benefit for them.
Okay. Question 3. When faced with many needed changes, how do you go about determining what areas need priority? So, for example, if there's like 5 or 10 maybe major changes that need to be made in school, how do you narrow it down to, say, top 5 or top 3? How would you do that?
So I certainly wouldn't do that alone. I would want to have a team with me to be able to make those the list. I think when you prioritize, student safety is always first, unquestionably. Next, I would always look at academics. What is going to have the biggest academic impact for our students if we make the change? And then trickling down, I think as an administrator, you need to also look not only at your building level, but you need to look at the bigger district level too. You know, what is the district? What are the district goals? And then make sure that your changes align with that.
Oh, yes, because you can't just go ahead and just do whatever you want. So you have to stay within the realms of what the district wants. Who would you want to be involved in that process? You know, in your building with narrowing it down to the priority changes. Who would be involved in the process besides, say, the administrator? Who would be involved with that? Would you have besides?
I think it would be first the administrative team would make that decision, and then kind of build out from there. So at the administrative level, make the change. Think about what your priority list is, and then build it out to like the coaches, academic interventionists, teacher leaders, to get them on board. And then from there, you know, you kind of keep building out those levels.
So is it a possibility that if an administrator thought that you know, A was an important issue, and then started telling the coaches, and they felt like, no, actually, I think what you have for B is more important. Do you think that could happen? Like, like what the administrator might feel is important, and then trickles down to his other leaders in the building. It's possible that they might say, I don't really think that's really that important. Let's go to the other thing.
Very much so, especially when I think when it comes to curriculum.
Yes.
I don't think always building administrators know all about curriculum. They come from their own expertise and experience at a certain grade level, and so if you want to implement change, let's say you were a middle school teacher and you're now the principal of a K-8 building, your area of expertise is really going to be that middle school level.
Yes.
So if you want to implement change in K-2, the teachers in K-2 might have a different idea of what's important because they're really living the curriculum.
So the outline of what an administrator could want as major change could narrow down as the administrators share it with other leaders and people in the building.
I think that's how it should be, unless it's a student safety issue. If it's a student safety issue,
perfect.
You need to be a little bit
All
tighter.
right. Question 4. When the decision has been made to implement change, like the change is going to happen, particularly in the area of lesson plans or curriculum, how does a leader address the concerns or worries that teachers are expressing, like maybe the stress of how to do the lesson plans or the new curriculum? How do we minimize the stress and the worries that most of the time the teachers feel when they know that this change it's approved by the district and the administrator, it's going to happen?
It's going to happen. I think a couple different levels. So one, I think you need to have the relationships built with your staff and with your faculty. And that brings with it that level of trust. And if you have trust with your faculty, they will recognize, hopefully, that you're doing something that is going to benefit them. The other piece would be being transparent about why is this change happening. Is it just that I made the change? Is it the district's making the change and we're going to implement it? But really being transparent about that whole process of what's going to happen and why it's going to happen, and letting teachers know how this can benefit them. I think also by building those relationships and that level of trust, then teachers understand that it's not going to be perfect initially, and that we're going to work through this together. And I think as the administrator, you need to provide supports for your teachers.
Where the coaches would come in and, let's just say, model how to write the new lesson plans, also model lessons regarding the new curriculum.
Right.
And even have grade level meetings based on that.
Right, and that it's not a gotcha. Like if you get it wrong, it's not, oh, you did it wrong, I gotcha, and penalize you. It's that, here's the support that's going to help you do it right.
But when change like that occurs, would you feel that support has to be a consistent thing? Like, say, if it was the new year of the new curriculum, wouldn't you say that would have to be a steady thing throughout the whole year so that the teachers do feel comfortable with this new implementation?
Yeah, it can't be a sink or swim type of thing. They need to be supported on multiple levels, whether it's coaches or videos or professional development or staff meetings. There needs to be that ongoing support because they need to be successful in it.
Okay. And my final question, when you go to present a new policy or procedure for teachers, whether the decision is made by at your building or from the downtown, what are the behind the scenes steps that are taken prior to implementing the phase? So like what happens behind the scenes before it even gets to your building, I guess?
Sure. So you have to look at what the change is, who it's going to impact, because you want to include all those stakeholders who are going to be impacted. You want to include them somehow in this transition. You want to go through specific steps, like how are we going to roll this out to teachers? Are we going to do it at a faculty meeting? Are we going to, give them, send them out for PD? So you need to have some kind of plan about how it's going to initially roll out, and in multiple steps. How are you going to, you need a plan for how are you going to address all the stakeholders in it. You need to have certain checkpoints, planned checkpoints. Like 1 month in, we're going to check on the teachers and see how they're doing with it. So you always need kind of that checks and balance. Like here's step 1, this is our check. Here's step 2, this is our check. And I think you need to also be as transparent as you can with the people who are involved with it.
So overall, as an administrator, when you're making changes in a building, you just can't, it's not something that's going to happen fast. Would you agree with that? Would you say it's a process by a step-by-step, play-by-play procedure?
Yes, and I think all teachers are different, and what might work for one teacher as you roll something out, somebody else might need a lot more support, and you need to be cognizant of that also.
Okay, this is my interview on change. Thank you, Dr. Waring, for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.